Jason, I was wondering, my sales team has been complaining a lot about having to look at lead and contact reports whenever they're trying to figure out activity in the territory, and it's really painful for them. Is there anything we could do to change that?
I don't know. It's just kind of the way Salesforce works. I mean, just people are leads, they're contacts. I mean, there's not really a way to get a view of both. You just have to, they're going to have to look in two places.
Yeah, and then there's this other thing. We have these really important reports that we pull for, the board meetings and our CMO, and every time someone hits refresh accidentally, all of the metrics get blown out, and if we don't have a point-in-time report, we've just totally lost that. Is there anything we can do about that?
Well, I don't know. As long as, the same lead or the same contact MQLs more than once, we have to overwrite the old information in order to pass it back to sales again. I mean, so the only way you're going to keep the historical is just to keep taking it offline and keep it in Excel.
Yeah. Well, if you're in this room, you've probably had conversations like that can be pretty disappointing. What we're here to talk to you about today is how you can open up your systems to get the insights to your sales and marketing teams that they want to get, and not be limited to these no conversations.
We want to take you a little bit on MongoDB's journey. So we're going to take you through some of our pain points, how we defined our process, our systems, how we got alignment with our executives, and the ability to move forward on a project like this.
So MongoDB, if you haven't heard the name before, is the company behind MongoDB, the open source NoSQL database. We service and support the product. I've been with the company for over 5 years, since sort of the beginning, and I helped build our marketing and sales systems from the ground up. So we started off, we've always had Salesforce, and we started off with Marketo. We transitioned to Eloqua about a year ago.
And I'm Jason Paquette, Director of Sales Operations. I've been working in software for almost 11 years now. I started out in sales and then sales management, and made a transition into sales operations sort of with what I did with my teams, how do we make that scale across the global sales organization? So using Salesforce to enable and deliver on all of our processes. Made the transition about 6 years ago, and during that time now I've become a certified Sales Cloud consultant, Force.com dev, so I don't write Apex, but the point and click stuff I can handle. And I'm also a 4-time Salesforce MVP, so interacting a lot with the Salesforce community and hearing a lot of the pains and working with a lot of people in the community.
Great. So we had a goal in mind, and before I get there, the kind of our path to full circle. Last summer, we started really thinking about how could we solve the problems that we were having, and started the conversation. And we actually came to the buying decision in December of this past year and implemented response management in about 3 weeks in January. It was a lot of sleepless nights. And so we are going to talk a lot about the process getting to that decision, what we've done so far, and then we're going to talk a bit about the future because we haven't actually done everything quite yet. So our goal was to get a single view of the buying journey that both sales and marketing agreed upon. For a long time, we were kind of speaking two different languages, as I'm sure some of you are familiar with. And so we just wanted to get definitions that both teams agreed upon, metrics behind that. And then also it was really important for us that we could actually report on that easily in Salesforce, understand it easily in Salesforce, so it was something that you could distribute to all of the members of your organization. It wasn't just left within an operations team to understand. So the way we started was thinking about defining our framework. So we had that goal in mind. We knew our pain points. And then we really wanted to come up with a framework that could speak to what we wanted to put in place. And so we really wanted to push ourselves to not be limited by the systems, to think outside the box. And we really wanted to build something that would work for what we were going towards. So what we started with is the kind of industry standard of serious decisions. This is the waterfall, just copy and pasted. And for us, it was great to start with an industry expert. People have done this in the past. You can learn from best practices, and kind of setting our mindset of what we were thinking about within this framework really just helped get that conversation going and off the ground. And so from there, what we brought into kind of the serious decision into MongoDB's waterfall is just a much more simplified version. So serious decision will say there's 4 buckets for MQLs. We really only needed 1. So just kind of skimming that down to exactly our needs, and then starting to build out definitions behind that. And so once we had that framework in place, we were able to sit down with various stakeholders, kind of run some interviews, see what people needed out of the systems, what they were wanting to understand, and keep kind of reiterating the process, getting those definitions clearer and clearer, looking at industry best practices, and then taking that research and getting all of the applicable stakeholders into one room. So this happened this past summer. We got our CRO, our CMO, and all of the most important stakeholders for a day-long summit. We had done all of those weeks of research, and so it wasn't about defining definitions. It was really agreeing upon what we had come up with. And so through that meeting, we were able to lay out the funnel, agree on the definitions. Another really important point was getting the C-level to actually feel the pain. So they could ask for a metric, and it would take their management team, like how many hours to figure it out and then produce it to them, and they just think they got the metric, and that was that. But really having them understand where the system was failing us, where we were hurting and not quite able to get to the answers that they wanted, and just having the time and their dedicated attention in that meeting really helped to have them see the other side. And from that meeting, get executive support and buy-in. So once we were going down the purchasing decision, we had the CMO and the CRO behind us, and that it would have been impossible to move forward with the sale without that.
And a huge part of that meeting wasn't so much around the definitions, because we'd done a bunch of the work ahead of that meeting. The whole idea of what the framework was and the background behind it, we didn't just make it up. It comes out of some research and best practices. We spent a big chunk of that day sort of educating our CRO and our CMO, who could release the budget to solve the problem. We had to take them down a bit into the weeds and help them actually understand the operational problem of, okay, we all agree that this is a smart model to follow. Why can't we actually deliver on it today? That there are significant systems limitations when you think about things like Salesforce.com, their whole lead to opportunity flow, was one of the initial kind of core things they released, 16, 17 years ago. It's a decade and a half old. The demand waterfall was first released, in 2008, almost a decade after Salesforce had been released. And you think about other things we'll talk about in a minute, like account-based marketing, as a kind of a common strategy. And some of the problems that things like the way a marketing automation system interacts with the funnel versus the way a sales rep in Salesforce interacts with the funnel. And, there's systems issues underlying, they're like sync timing issues. One of the biggest problems in my experience working with trying to get marketing automation and Salesforce to work together, the biggest problems all come down to sync timing and the fact that people are one database in marketing automation, but they're two databases, leads and contacts, on the Salesforce side. And how do you solve for that? And what problems does that have for you? And we're only going to touch on a couple of those problems here. I've had like entire Dreamforce sessions that I've gone into like that particular problem. I don't have 45 minutes right now. We're going to try to cover it in about 5. So we're gonna try to highlight just the core things that were impactful for MongoDB. If we want to chat over lunch or something, we could go as deep as you guys want to. But one of the core sort of things that impacted us was, there's leads and contacts that are people that you're nurturing. At some point, they interact with something, whether it's I'm downloading a data sheet about MongoDB, I'm downloading a white paper, I'm attending a user group event, watching a webinar. At some point, they're going to interact with something. A marketing automation will plug in a campaign member, which is great because it gives you the history of what the touch was. But your sales team isn't working the campaign member. They're back to working leads and contacts. And I've seen a lot of sales organizations, including ones I've been in myself, kind of miss the mark and miss the point that, well, your marketing automation is appending these touches onto your existing contacts. And they took a very lead-centered approach because that's the way Salesforce says they were designed. You got to create leads and those convert to opportunities. What about all these campaign touches that are coming in on your existing contact database? A lot of times those just straight fall through the cracks. And so how do you make sure that those don't fall through the cracks? And then at some point you're interacting with people, you qualify a deal. Well, the deal is not, you kind of make this transition out of I'm interacting with a person to interacting with a deal. And a deal, like according to CSO Insights, it's on average 5 people. So you've got 5 people in leads and contacts becoming one deal that you're interacting with. And so trying to track your funnel across 4 different tables in Salesforce between members, leads, contacts, opportunities, the opportunity for these things to become disconnected, not being able to tie results back of, okay, well, the sales rep updated the lead status here, but that didn't tie back to the member. I have a campaign member back here for a white paper download 6 months ago. The result at the time had been they were unresponsive. Then I get a campaign member that they downloaded our product or tried an evaluation of our product. And I have to overwrite that historical status that told me, well, they had downloaded the white paper and they were unresponsive. I've got to overwrite that data in order to say, oh, hey, here's an MQL for sales to follow up with again. So how do we make sure that we can stitch all of those results back to what those touches were? And so our answer and trying to solve for this even before full circle, trying to get as much of that data as we could onto the campaign member. And those of you who know certain Salesforce functionality like Apex code and workflow rules, and there's only so much you can do to bridge the gap between these tables that are linked together, but updates on one can't necessarily update the other and that kind of stuff. And so we found Full Circle that helps us solve this. This is now the second company I've implemented Full Circle at. We implemented it at my last company too. And it's taken all the heavy lifting on being able to sync this together. So how do we get there? Well, we're using response management to do it, and it's really the enabling piece. There's all of our metrics around what the touch was and what the result was are coming thanks to Full Circle. So all of our conversion metrics, all of our velocity metrics, all of the volume metrics, all of our sourcing metrics, everything is coming based on the fact that we've got this information synced down onto the campaign member. There's another sort of big problem with our world moving towards the account-based approach, which isn't really that new of an approach. It's just the phrase account-based, has been coined relatively recently and marketed heavily. But when I first learned outbound prospecting myself, it was identify the company you want to go after, find the people you can go after. And so we, when I was still in sales, we were trying to follow the same approach. I want to be able to see who all the people are at a company I'm going to pursue. Well, the blessing and the curse at MongoDB is, as an open source company, people can use our product and we have no idea who you are because you can download it from mirror sites. Like, you don't have to fill out a form to implement and go into production using MongoDB without paying us a cent. And so we have to train our reps as part of our outbound sales process, the notion of finding smoke, where there's smoke, there's fire. So what activity can you find that indicates they may be using MongoDB? Because we'd rather sell to the people who are already in production on our community edition and pick up a phone and they don't even realize we have things like professional services and consulting that can help them optimize and follow best practices, or extra tooling that helps their IT department. There's things they don't even know we offer because they thought we were open source. If we're free, that's all there is to get from us is use the free product. And so when we have these various touches, like they've downloaded the data sheet, or they've signed up for a webinar or attended a user group, following sort of the decade and a half old Salesforce model of all of these inquiries are going to create leads, means that all of that activity is fragmented all over, and it's really hard, damn near impossible, to try to get an account-centered view when you need to be able to see that it was multiple touches from the same people from the same company. And so the ability to get all of that, all of those campaign touches put together in such a way that we can gain that account-centered view. And the way we're on the path to solving this at Mongo, we haven't actually implemented it, but I put it in place in previous companies using tools like, if you've heard of like Dupe Blocker or Ringlead. Kind of the goal is where marketing automation would see a new email address, John at doesn't exist. All marketing automation knows how to do is create a new lead. And now we've got this activity fragmented. And so what we can do instead with these tools is it can pick up on, all right, well, we have Acme on the web form that's sort of similar to Acme.com Inc. period. And we have a domain at acme.com, and we have other people with that same domain linked to this account over here. Let's stitch these together. Let's make sure we get all of that activity that this person is taking in a place where we can run reports of what activity is happening at Acme, so that our sales reps can see where there's smoke, where there is low-hanging fruit for us to try to sell into, so they're not beating down doors saying, hey, I know you're an Oracle shop, and here's why you should want to change to Mongo. We can find the people already using Mongo, and it's a much better sale for us. And so we're still on the path to solving that here. One of the quirks to know, and again, this was a big part of previous Dreamforce sessions I've done, but one of the quirks is the different types of integrations that something like a Marketo has versus an Eloqua. Most of my experience was on the Marketo side, and Eloqua integrates with Salesforce differently. So Ringlead, Dupe Blocker don't necessarily work with that integration. We've got to find a different way to solve it, and that's the journey we're on for that right there.
So another big issue we're having is that the native Salesforce reports weren't actually pulling in the metrics that we needed. So we were doing a lot of offline reporting and just manual process to actually get where we needed. So for example, get my little animation. For example, we wanted to get campaign by funnel stages. So where are people coming into campaigns based on their funnel stage? In order to do that, we had to do snapshot reports, pull them into Excel, do some trickery there, and then that would be something that would be prone to human error, for example, changing every time the person pulling the reports would change. And another big issue is that we were looking at, we were giving giving contacts to sales to follow up on. So actually MQLing contacts, but in our funnel reporting, we're just doing lead reports. So we're missing out on reporting to the executive level some other contacts that we were giving to sales. In addition to that, some of the native functionality in Salesforce, for example, with campaign influence, it's looking at total contract value. We needed annual contract value. So again, that was a manual report that we'd have to update. We weren't able to change attribution in the current model, so we just have 0 or 100%. And then lastly, on opportunities, it was the last touch that was the last activity that a contact took before the opportunity, and that might not actually be the last activity that's associated to the opportunity. It's just the last thing that happened to the person. So these were all just kind of giving us incorrect metrics and not allowing us to trust our data. So what we're moving towards, and this is something we're actively working on, is a multi-touch attribution model. And what we're hoping to see is be able to look at all these different touch points on opportunities to understand what's being most impactful in our marketing and in our funnel, and how we can improve that. So even today, though, the reports that we have with Full Circle that have been hugely impactful, our funnel reporting is now all using campaign member reports, capturing both leads and contacts.
And even though we haven't done, campaign influence yet, that's next on the docket. Like even in the absence of having implemented that functionality, just in the first 2 months being live, we're already gaining tremendous value out of just what becomes standard reports for us. Reports we couldn't run before are now incredibly easy for us to run before. So like this one is illustrating as an example. On the left, we've got the age of our MQLs. How long did it take sales to pick it up and start working it? And you could see we had a problem, a week and a half before they pick it up. Big problem. And just in 2 months, we've taken that down in 2 of our regions down to less than a day. And what happens as a result? Well, there's a correlation, of course, correlation and causation. Well, we won't have that conversation, but there's at least a correlation between we're following up faster, we're also converting at higher rates. So there's a trend downward, which is good on our velocity, where we're following up to MQLs faster, and a trend up on our conversion rates, which is good because we're feeding the funnel better. And this is just 2 months worth of data, even before we've done any of our influence-based reporting.
And one of the biggest reports that has come out is and this is actually something that the Influitive speaker spoke about. We have the same thing. You have a link on every campaign that will pop up in a report like this. And so if you're looking, let's say, at a white paper, you can look at it by the different funnel stages. You can look at those conversion percentages, and then even broken out by region. So a report like this is so impactful for our events, for our marketing team. In particular, I use the events team as an example. They're running these really expensive, high-value programs that are often targeted towards the middle, late stage of the funnel. So by definition of first touch or last touch, not actually getting captured in a reporting previously. Now they can pull up this report and really understand where they're impacting the life cycle. And when I emailed out the team saying this is this new report, this is the GIF I received, they were literally jumping with joy. So we hope you enjoyed the talk. Just some takeaways that we'd like you to walk away here with. Don't accept the limitations of the status quo of your systems. Really push yourself and your team to know what you want to get to and move towards that. And also get buy-in early for your vision. So put together your definitions from that, not accepting the status quo, and then get your executive team on board.
And I mean, I hope I hammered this, and we're just going to kind of close with it. Just don't base your process on what your systems say you should do. Like if you look at the original Salesforce lead to opportunity flow, it's very linear, and marketing and sales nowadays is very cyclical. By design, you're expecting people to pass through the funnel multiple times. And so being able to make sure that you adopt systems that help you enable the reality of how you're working with your pipeline and with your funnel. Don't choose systems or choose your process based on what your systems say you can or cannot do. being involved in the community, I'm still surprised, even to this day, how many people will respond back on, I don't know how many of you are on the Salesforce community, but you have the opportunity to go ask questions and other Salesforce users will provide answers. I'm still surprised at how many people will answer a question like, that's not the way Salesforce was designed to work, that's not possible. And I'll contribute to the thread, well, actually, been doing it, works great, here's how you have to think a little bit outside the box and think that way when you're thinking about how to solve your problems. Thanks, guys.